Hello there, my beautiful, lovely internet friends. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Trauma Talk, where we're going to talk a little bit about facing triggers specifically in relation to trauma and PTSD. Now, this video is technically a part 2. I posted the full story that leads up to this on my main channel, Footless Joe. I'll put the link down here and also above, right up there somewhere. You can click it and check it out. In that video, I talk about facing the biggest trigger that I've ever had when it comes to my specific trauma. So I've talked a little bit about this before on this channel, but the city of Pueblo, Colorado has been a nightmare and a monster and the definition of terror for me for about 9 years. The worst of everything I went through when it came to the emotional, spiritual, specifically sexual abuse that I endured was in that place. And Pueblo, like the entire city in my mind, came to represent everything horrible, everything bad that happened to me. I tied so many bad memories to that place, to the point where if someone brought up the word Pueblo in conversation, I would start having to like fight a panic attack for a while there. Now, I've talked on this channel before about overcoming different kinds of triggers in my life. When you go through something traumatic and you end up with these things that trigger these traumatic flashbacks or memories or nightmares or panic attacks, these are unique to everybody. But the biggest one to me has always been this city. And I've done a lot to try to confront this fear before. A couple years ago, I made a video on this channel, I will also link that down below, where I went down to Pueblo and I filmed it. This was kind of decided on a whim. I was like, I'm gonna face this, I'm gonna get through it, it's gonna be fine, I'm just gonna muscle through it. And that was a really bad idea because I ended up disassociated from myself for like 3 days. It was really not a good experience, something my brain was not ready for. It's one of the times that I learned that you really can't force your mental health into the place that you want it to be at. I was not ready for that and I jumped into it too quickly. I'm never really sure if the proper language is like facing a trigger or really just diminishing the triggering effect that it has on us. But for me, it became a goal to be able to face this place without all of the frightening negative emotions that came up for me. But this was a doozy to try to accomplish because it was so engulfing. It was so just like had a hold on my mind and my body as like, it is unsafe, it is bad, it is everything that is terrifying and hurtful and painful. Don't go there, don't talk about it, don't think about it. And that was a little challenging considering that it is not that far from where I live. So when it comes to confronting really big triggers in our journey and our experiences like this, I wanted to share a few things that I did to prepare for eventually what happened, which is a few weeks ago. I was able to go down there alone and I was okay, which was unthinkable. I can't stress that enough. Completely unthinkable even a few months ago, even a few years ago, right? So something that works really well for me is not trying to like forget or erase something, but trying to expand my definition of it. For instance, the whole month of October is really dark for me. It's really hard. It has been for years because so much of what I experienced is tied to that month, is tied to like the season changing and the way that the air feels, and it's just a hard month to get through. And so about 5 years ago, I started intentionally doing big things in the month of October that were positive or the right direction for my life or new for me, just something that could help expand my definition in my mind of October when I thought of it. Like for instance, one of the first things that I did was volunteer with a domestic violence awareness organization and help out an event on campus, spreading awareness and connecting with people and talking. And it was so cool. It was like such a positive memory for me. It was scary, but really good that now when I thought of October, I thought of all the terrible things about October and also, just like on the tail end, also this cool thing that I did. And then a few years ago, I made the decision to have my leg amputation in October. While this was definitely not a fun experience, it was a decision I got to make for myself, and I knew it was the right thing for me and for my body to move my life forward. So now when I think of October, I also think about the anniversary of that was 2 years ago. I survived that and I'm doing things I want to do now. Isn't that cool? So for me, when it came to Pueblo, I wanted to expand my definition of what this place meant. So much of what I experienced that was really negative and impacted me in a very traumatizing way happened in that place. And so anytime someone brought up Pueblo in conversation or anytime I had to go past a certain exit on the highway, I would start internally or actually having a panic attack, freaking out, being like fight, flight, or freeze mode, just 100% like no. Everything in my body screamed no when it came to Pueblo. But a few weeks ago, I was able to go down there on my own for the first time in 9 years and I was okay. It took a while to get to that place. So let's talk a little bit about what that looked like for me. So one of the ideas that I came up with for trying to defeat the ultimate boss of Pueblo in my own mental health and trauma journey was to expand the definition of what this city meant. So I'd gone down there once with Brian to have dinner. We tried to make it into a really positive experience. It's just that my body and my brain was not ready for that, and it was not a good thing. So I thought I would take a slightly different approach for the second time that I tried to face it. And that was, for starters, planning in advance, knowing that this was coming, understanding that this was gonna be somewhere I was going, and talking to other people about it. For instance, my counselor. And something that I've always really enjoyed doing when I've had the opportunity or the means to do so is going out to a meal with friends, right? Like, it's something that a lot of us really enjoy. And so I invited my friends Erin and Megan to come along to Pueblo with me, with Brian, on a Sunday morning for brunch, because brunch seems like a very unintimidating meal, I think we can all agree. Now, on a side note, I was a little bit concerned about inviting them because I was a little worried that I was gonna be inviting them to just like a sob fest from yours truly, but they were game for it either way. Thanks again, you guys. And so after weeks of thinking about it, weeks of talking to my therapist about it, we did it. We drove down there together. I had people around me who I felt very safe with, who I knew had my best interest at heart, who I knew that if I did have a negative reaction, it would be okay. So I felt the freedom to like experience what I needed to experience. We didn't stay there very long. We had a nice brunch. We walked by the Riverwalk, which didn't have any water in it at the time, so we just walked by concrete. Great, very pretty, beautiful city, which was fine. And then we drove home, and being there wasn't fun, but being with them was good. And so it's like I started slowly expanding my definition of everything that Pueblo was. So though I did experience negative emotions, especially when I got back and was kind of like back safe in my house and was able to breathe a little bit, it by no means was easy, but it was definitely better than the time before that. And now I had this positive memory of that place with people who I love and care about. So then I had to go back there for a work meeting. I did the same thing, really planned it out in advance, brought Brian with me, didn't go alone, made sure I had a lot of time after that meeting to be able to decompress, to whatever self-care I needed to do, and that one went okay. But the one thing that I was never sure I'd be able to do was go back there alone. But a couple weeks ago, on October 30th, which is the 9-year anniversary of the worst of the trauma that I experienced, I decided to take that day off work and go for a drive. Now, when I started going for a drive, I didn't have a particular location in mind. I'll go for drives to like relax, I'll take my dogs with me, we're going to the mountains, maybe get some coffee somewhere, it's nice. I don't know how to explain it any other way than this, but that day when I started driving, it's like I knew I needed to go there. I knew I needed to go to Pueblo, and I felt like I was in a mental space where I could handle that. So I decided to try to listen to that. Now, I'll be honest, I was a little bit concerned that I was doing the thing again of trying to face something because I wanted to get through it and I was tired of being scared, so I'm just gonna face it head on, which works for some things, but is not recommended for very traumatic triggers. I was a little worried that that's what I was doing again, and so I gave myself a lot of outs. Like, as I got progressively closer to Pueblo, I knew that I could turn back at any exit. I removed any kind of self-blame if that's what I chose to do. Like, doing this for me wasn't to prove a point. It was, if my body and my mind were ready for it, okay, I'll give it a shot. And so as I got closer and closer to the city, I kept checking in with myself, kept checking in to make sure that I was okay. And when I got there, I kept doing the same thing, kept sort of monitoring my internal temperature, knowing whenever I need to leave, I can. Didn't stay there long, left, and I was honestly all right. This is a huge victory for me. It's something that I never thought would be able to happen. I am so incredibly grateful for it, but it took 9 years of work to get there. It took 9 years of time and conversations and therapy and journaling and introspection and reading books and listening to people and all of this to get to a place where I could face that. And one of the biggest things that I've learned as I have tried to address these different triggers in my life is that it is legitimately okay if they are still there. I think for a long time I crippled myself, I crippled my own journey of healing by trying to force things, by trying to make it happen because I was tired of it or I didn't like that I felt this way. And so I'd almost be mean to myself to get over something. Like, God, why are you freaking out about pink carpet? No one cares, it's fine. Yeah, it's really scary to you. Yeah, it makes you have nightmares. Yes, it triggers flashbacks, but it's fine, like just get over it. Like, that was the kind of internal monologue that I have with myself. And for me anyways, and anyone that I know, that's not a mindset that promotes healing or being able to safely move through things. For me, I had to stop looking at these trauma triggers that I had as badges or levels or anything like that. And I also was able to get to the place where I stopped seeing them as signs of weakness, which I think is the biggest thing. It's really only quite recently, when we're talking about like the journey of my healing from this trauma, that I've been able to look at how I see places like Pueblo and the terror that I feel around those instead of with any shame, but looking at it with understanding and being like, yeah, it makes sense that my body feels that way. It's okay. I'm not judging myself for that. And also, I'd like to find a way to expand the definition of that. I'd like to find a way to be more comfortable with it because I don't enjoy these emotions that are coming up when I'm thinking about it. So in this whole process of facing really big triggers and expanding my definition of what these triggers are, it's been really important for me to remember that there is still no shame in having them. Like if these things that I was trying didn't work, that's okay. There are other things to try. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes things we don't even know yet, right? I honestly feel like removing that self-judgment was one of the biggest reasons that I was able to do this, because I could just listen to my body and I knew that if I needed to turn back at any point, that was okay. So like the pressure wasn't there. There are so many different ways to address different triggers that we have. Like I said at the beginning of this video, so many of what triggers us is personal because the trauma that we've gone through is personal. When I can take something and start adding on to what I think of when I think about it, that's been really helpful for me. It's been a process that takes a long time. It's best if it's not rushed, as I've mentioned more than once in this video. And it's been a really helpful tool in my belt when it comes to addressing and healing from trauma. Let me know how this feels for you, how this resonates with you. Is this something that you think, yeah, I could see where something like that could work for me? Is this something where you're like, no, I'm not expanding any kind of definition of this trigger for me because no. I'd love to hear your thoughts and your reactions down below in the comment section. Thank you for hanging out with me and listening. If you want to hear the whole story of how I did this, what that was like, what it felt like, check out the video, like I said, on my other channel, Footless Joe. I put the link down below. I'd love it if you check it out if you have time, if you feel like it. And also a big thank you to all my patrons over on Patreon for continuing to support what I do here. It is so meaningful to me and invaluable, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you. If you're interested in what Patreon is, I put a link on screen. You can check it out. It's a little community there where you can support creators and in return get some pretty cool perks. But to you watching this video right now, thank you so much for spending a few minutes out of your day here with me today. You could be anywhere in the world doing anything else, and you chose to spend a few minutes with me, and I really appreciate that. I hope that you take some time today to take care of yourself and be gentle to yourself, whatever that looks like, because you are very much worth it. I love you guys. I'm thinking about you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.